Welcome back to another episode of the Bearcat Basketball Podcast. This is Season 2. I'm your host, Alex Meacham, former UC basketball player from 1997 to 1999 under the legendary coach, Bob Huggins. I was fortunate enough to wear the iconic Jordan brand unis during my time. Now, you can follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Alex_Meacham. Meacham is spelled M-E-A-C-H-A-M. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn, Alex Meacham. I'm on Snapchat, Big Meach 41. And now, I can officially say this, on Season 2, I am now on TikTok, at Alex Meacham 41. This is a special edition of the podcast, my interview series with a very special guest.
Bearcat fans, I'm excited to welcome in my next guest. My good friend Michael Perry, who's the Senior News Director for Content at the Enquirer, reached out to me and said, we have a new beat reporter starting June 1st, and I think you'll really like him. Now, since the basketball season has started, I've followed his reporting, and I think he does a great job. So I decided to get him on the podcast. I'd like to welcome in Cincinnati Bearcats reporter for the Enquirer, Keith Jenkins. What's going on, Keith?
Meach, how are you, brother? Pleasure. It's my pleasure.
I'm doing very well, man. How are you doing navigating through being a, I guess, kind of new reporter, the pandemic, the challenges of that?
Yeah, it's been weird. It's been a weird first few months. I guess we're about 6-7 months on the job. I think the good thing for me is I'm from here, born and raised, so I know the city, and I've been around these programs, since I was in diapers. So that helps. I think if that wasn't the case, I'd probably be struggling a little bit. But it's definitely weird as you're trying to, build relationships with these coaches and these players, and a lot of our interactions are through Zoom calls and whatnot. But it's been fun. I've enjoyed it, and I think, everybody, me, them, all of us, we've made the best of it.
Absolutely. Now, hey, I'd be doing the listeners a disservice if I didn't give you an opportunity to kind of tell a little bit about your history. I know you talked about being from Cincinnati, but tell us a little bit about your story because, you see so many media people, but I don't think the fans actually know their story. So can you just briefly tell us your story real quick?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm from Cincinnati, like I said, born and raised. Good Samaritan Hospital.
You took us way back.
Right, you know what I mean? I went to Walnut Hills High School, and it's funny because UC, I played, football, basketball, baseball over there, but football was my sport. And UC was the first, major program to recruit me over there, and Rick Minner was the head coach at the time. And I was going to go to UC. My dad played football at UC, Keith Jenkins Sr. He was drafted in 77 by the Falcons. And so it was kind of like my steps were, in a sense, already ordered. Cincinnati was already on me. They already knew me, boom. And then Rick Minner gets fired. And I'm like, whoa, all right, now what? So then I actually ended up going to the University of Toledo, which is another offer that I had. So I went there, got hurt, and then, had a career-ending injury, and I actually ended up getting my degree from the University of Cincinnati. So, in a roundabout way, I ultimately ended up being a Bearcat. But I was at UC. I was first black editor-in-chief ever there, and so I really enjoyed my time at UC.
What's the news record?
The news record is the independent student newspaper over there. Really news organization. I mean, they do podcasts and radio and TV and all kind of stuff. But that was a good time. And yeah, I've known Michael Perry. He was also a former sports guy at the news record and a former editor in chief over there. So yeah, I've worked, for the Associated Press and ESPN and all around the country, and this opportunity came up, and I was kind of in a weird space between contracts in my career, and it just made sense to have an opportunity to come back home, and like I said, I've since my dad plays there, and I have uncles with degrees from UC, and my tenure at UC, it just made sense, and they needed someone that could come in and be familiar and could really, leave and mark and do some solid work on that beat. And so it just made sense for both of us. So I'm back, and it just feels good to really be back home.
It seems like, Keith, no matter where you go, you end up coming back to Cincinnati.
Right. Good or bad, you're right.
you come back. Let's take one step back a little bit. Your
Sure.
father, he played for the University of Cincinnati with football. Who did he play for? Which coach? Do you remember?
Who was the coach in the 70s?
I know that was a long time ago.
I can't remember.
Back in the day.
I can't remember.
How were they as a team? Do you remember?
They were pretty rough, 5-1 seasons. He was kick returner, punt returner, corner. He was there for 2 seasons. He started at the University of Tampa, and then transferred to the University of Cincinnati. I remember the game where I'm dating myself crazy, but Blue Adams broke one of his records one game. I think it was a punt return, and my dad and I were there, and he was pissed. Because I think like everybody, you root for the next generation, right? But at the end of the day, that's your legacy. You know what I'm saying? So you want to see those, So, but no, it's weird being back because I've had a lot of people who have, called and emailed and hit my website and like, man, I remember when your dad was playing. Or the cool thing is they remember when I played, or they knew my mom, or they know my uncle, or so that's kind of the cool part of being back home is, I am of this city and of this fan base. Yes, I'm a journalist. I'm objective. I try to attack every story, with that objectivity. But everybody knows I'm a Bearcat, and it's not a secret. So, it's been cool that the city, I feel like, has embraced me, and they really, I feel like they've watched me grow from when I used to run around there with my dad, and then my playing days and all that. So it's been really cool to be back and be, I guess, welcomed warmly by the city.
Absolutely. Hey, you also did a story on George Wilson, Big Jiff.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's funny. So I had just gotten here, and I first met George, I think, in 2007, I want to say. I was working for WCPO at the time, and I think it was either me or Mark Slaughter or me and Brooks Merriweather. We were out on assignment, and this was back when they used to have like the summer league games. I don't even know if I guess not because COVID they probably didn't, but they had the summer league games over at Woodward, and we went over there. George was there. We started chopping it up. So I've known George for so many years. So I get here, and Bob Huggins did a story with I think Andy Katz, and he talked about his top players of all time. And he was mentioning, how he thought, Bobbitt was the best shooter he ever had. And he talked about Kenyon's versatility and how much of a force Danny Fortson was down low, and just and then he talked about some West Virginia guys and, Beasley and just his top players. And I'm like, you know what, I want to do my top players. Who do I feel are my top players in UC history? So I do a list, and I did it by position. So I had Kenyon at 5. I had Danny Fortson at 4. I had Jack Twyman at 3. I had Nick Van Exel at 2, and then I had the Big O at 1. And then I had some and I had some guys off my number one off the bench guy, my sixth man, was Melvin Levitt. And it's not to say that I think Melvin is the 6th greatest player in the history of UC basketball, but, when you think about a 6th man, you want a guy that's instant offense, gets the crowd up, if you're in a rut offensively or defensively, Melvin's going to come in and give you that energy. And I don't know of any player in program history that was more of an energy guy than Melvin Levitt was. So I that was my list. And then, of course, I had to have a lot of honorable mentions in there. So I had, Ron Bonham, and I had George Wilson in there and a few other guys. And so I get a call from George, right? And George, and he's like, he's like, hey, Keenan. I'm like, hey, George, how you doing? He's like, well, I was a lot better until I read your list. And I'm like, oh, shoot. So George and I started chopping it up, and he was adamant about, he wanted more, not himself, but he wanted more representation from those national championship teams.
George will let you know.
And I'm grateful, because one of the things that when I was younger, because, I grew up a huge UC basketball fan, and, my first team that made me fall in love with that program was the 92 squad. I mean, Nick Van Exel, I think me being a little kid and seeing little Nick killing it on the court, I think I gravitated towards him. And that team was amazing. And then it was Danny Fortune, and then it was Kenyon, and then it was Steve Logan, and then, boom, boom, boom. But after George and I had our conversation, and, he was upset, but we had a respectful conversation. And I said, you know what, George, the problem with what I feel you see where they have lacked throughout the years is I feel like they haven't properly given those championship teams their due. Mm-hmm. All of us think, until we really start digging in and really learning the history of the program, that Oscar Robertson was a part of those teams. He was not.
He wasn't.
Jack. We see Jack Twyman's number up there. We know how great he was. He was not on those teams. There is not a number up there in the rafters from those national championship teams. So I sat down with George, and we went down in his basement where he's got a big Hall of Fame and of just memorabilia galore. And I just wanted him to talk with me about how special, 61, 62, those seasons, what he learned. He learned so much from Oscar, who had just left before he got there. And, just the run that those guys had, nearly winning 3 straight. It's just a remarkable run, one of the best in the history of college basketball. And frankly, I don't think the University of Cincinnati has done a good enough job of pushing those teams and those men to the forefront. So that was my mission, to introduce an entire new generation of fans to those teams, to those players. And then I ultimately kind of wanted to force UC's hand in a sense that, we got the new AD and John Cunningham, who I think is a great guy.
Absolutely.
But I think one thing he has to do is learn about those teams and then make the decision, how can we, better acknowledge and memorize those guys who, frankly, are dying. I mean, George Wilson's 78 years old, and he told me, look, man, I don't know how many years I got left. So that was my mission, to just bring more light on those all-time great teams, and hopefully I was able to do that.
Well, first of all, I agree with so much of what you just said. And just to even piggyback what you're talking about, so Terry Nelson was on my podcast, and we kind of were previewing the season and talking about this season, this Bearcat team. But we were talking about, his Final Four team that he was part of, and just the group Terry played with, and how, in my opinion, they are the most recognizable group in UC history.
Sure.
Like, obviously Kenyon Martin is a recognizable player, but that 92 team is the most recognizable team. And Terry and I talked about this both on the podcast and off. How funny is it? They didn't win a national championship, but they are far more popular than the two teams that won the national championship. And furthermore, Keith, I put this to the test of Terry and everybody that was in the room. I said, name the starting lineup or 5-6 guys on that national championship team. And people struggled. People were like, Oscar, nope, he wasn't on that team.
Right.
Like
see, that's always the first name. It's always the first name.
Always the first name. People didn't know. And then I said, okay, the Final Four team. Everybody's like, Nick, Terry, C. Blunt, E. Martin. And everybody knows it. Like, boom, it just rattles off like Belle Biv DeVoe. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
So I love that you did that, and I think you're
spot
on.
And not to cut you off, but like one thing we got to remember too about those national championship teams is they had 4 black players in the starting lineup, and we talk about what is it, Texas Southern? It's early in the morning, my brain. But, like, we recognize that team as having the first team with all 5, which they should be remembered as that. Like, that's a big deal. But
Right.
UC had 4 during a time where there were so many segregated schools. Like, George talked to me about his stepdad. George is from Chicago. His stepdad had to tell him, hey, I need you to know in Cincinnati, they're right across the river from the segregated South. So you do not cross that river. And, right down the road in Lexington was Adolph Rupp and the amazing Kentucky Wildcats team who only had white players. This is during that era. So that team, yes, they were amazing and they were great, but just from a historical perspective and their impact on integrating this sport, they should be remembered for that, if nothing else, So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just, as I'm thinking, I'm like, man, we gotta talk about this squad for sure.
And,
for sure.
It's funny you say that. I do agree, and I think Cunningham is going to be a great AD at UC, and I think he and I have had this conversation recently that recognizing the past players and the past success helps your future. Yeah. And one of the things that I wanted to accomplish with this podcast is to have the ability to highlight a lot of former players' stories that just weren't told. I mean, on this podcast, I've interviewed almost 40-plus former players, and I've had so many UC fans reach out to me and say, I never knew his story. I didn't know this about him. I didn't know what a great player. Like, I interviewed Herb Jones, who was a huge part of that Final Four team. Yep. And the funny thing is, I had people coming up to me after they heard that interview, just randomly people coming up and go, Herb was the most important person on that team, and I did not know that. I always look at Nick and Coach, and I'm like, so I think in concert with a lot of different, like you, myself, and other folks, and UC, to bring to light, I think, the great history of UC basketball from all the way back to the 60s and prior to is definitely a must. If the Bearcat basketball program wants to continue to reach new heights, you've got to promote your future, your past. So
completely agree.
So hey, we've talked. That was actually a great conversation. Didn't know we were going to go there, but I'm glad we did. Now let's talk about right now. Let's talk about this Bearcat basketball team. We've had pretty much a small sample size thus far, 4 games. I want to discuss those 4 games, but also I want to get into the next 2 games with USF and then at Georgia. We'll get into that shortly. But from the 4-game sample size that we've seen thus far, what's your impression of this team?
I think that when I look at this team, I'd say that there are 3 guys who know their role, and that's it. I think you start with Keith Williams. I'd start with Jeremiah Davenport, and perhaps to a lesser degree, but I'd still put him on this list, David DeJulius. I think these are the 3 guys on that roster that when they hit the court, they know exactly what they're expected to do, what exactly their role is for John Brandon and that team. The other guys have no clue, and that's no shot at John. That's no shot at the team because he's got a group full of, transfers and freshmen who, hey, guys, I know you just graduated a minute ago, but I'm going to need you to play, So he's got this fresh group of guys and all these different puzzle pieces, and they're all trying to figure out how they best fit, when should they play, who should come off the bench, who should be in the starting lineup. And, with this unconventional, crazy season and this truncated off season where they didn't get to play as much and be around each other as much as usual, it's just been a kind of a rocky start, and I think it's kind of to be expected. But those 3 guys are really the only guys that, know what the hell they're supposed to do out there. I think Tari Eason is special, and I think we've seen glimpses of it. The freshman forward, Seattle guy, one of the best high school basketball players in the state of Washington last year. He's special, and I think it was Keith or maybe DeJulius who joked that we may not have him that long. He's that talented. And I think that Brandon saw it and said, all right, I need you to start. So he put him in the starting lineup, and he's like, you're just too special. And I think what we saw is maybe Rapolis he may not be able to fill the role that John wanted him to. And that's no knock on Rapp. I just think it's just as he's figuring out what is on his roster and what he'll need, I think he's kind of, like I said, putting the pieces together. So I think we've seen glimpses of greatness, and I think we've seen where they literally don't know what the hell they're doing. I mean, and it's no knock. I mean, I just think it's almost, you know what I mean? So, they're really suspect out of timeouts. They're suspect in out of bounds plays. But these are all things that Brandon himself has owned up to. The first game of the season, they played against the zone defense and had no idea what to do. And that was something that Brandon's like, okay, that's my bad. We didn't practice that. They hadn't played in the zone. We weren't sure if they would do that. And so they're very young. They're very, they're inexperienced as far as with each other. And I think we're going to see them probably, improve exponentially as the season goes along. But right now, man, they're just figuring things out. And, at a 2-2, I think that's exactly what you would think they'd be. And with a team that, well, credit to them, they went down to Knoxville, and I think Tennessee may be the most talented team in the country. I don't want to say they're the best team, but like from top to bottom, their roster is loaded with NBA guys. And UC went down there and went toe-to-toe with them and damn near beat them in a game where they, I hate to say it, but they're playing against the refs too. Because I've never it's been a while since I've seen a game called that way. The disparity and the discrepancy between the two foul calls were just insane. But, we're seeing that this team has the potential. So we'll see how they start to look here, after the new year for sure.
And I do want to talk about that Tennessee game a little bit more, so I'm going to jump into that in a second. But looking at this 2-2 record, if you really look at it, so take all of what you just said, and I think it's very important because they've played Lipscomb, Xavier, Furman, and Tennessee. And in my opinion, of those four teams, they're all very good teams. They're great teams to help prepare this Bearcat team. Now, here's the deal. In the past, in a non-pandemic year, UC would play, 3 or 4, or maybe even more teams you've never heard of in your life and blow them out, and they would have exhibition games. So they would have so many practices prior to that. So going into games like this, Xavier or Tennessee, they would have had more reps together, more time of dealing with adversity. But here you are thrown into a tough team in Lipscomb who plays a zone, like you said, that they just weren't prepared for. Xavier, who I think is a better team than most people expected, get 3 guys back for that game, 2 off COVID, and Adam Kunkel gets his waiver. Furman is a very well-coached team, and offensively is – I mean, they run some good shit. And so they played it tough, and I think fans I was looking through some tweets after that Tennessee game. I'm like, folks, they're playing good teams, and they're 2-2 and close to winning. Could be 4-0 if a couple things go differently. Thoughts on that, Keith?
Yeah, and that Xavier game was tough, and I said this to our Xavier reporter Adam Baum. I told him before the game started, I'm like, the difference in this game, I don't think is going to be talent. I think it's going to be the fact that Xavier had already played 4 or 5 games going into that game. And you could tell, they just knew each other better. Their sets were better. They were more organized, particularly defensively. And even through all of that, that was still a game. UC was a possession or two of that thing going. And the thing, too, in both of these games that they've lost, they had leads late. Dipping into the 6-minute mark, they were leading in both of those games, and I agree with you. I think Xavier is a much better team than we give them credit for. Like I said, Tennessee, Brandon said this is a Final Four team, and I don't disagree with them. They got Final Four talent. They got a coach in Rick Barnes. I think some people are hot and cold on him. I think he's a good coach. So they lost to 2 quality opponents that they nearly beat, and I think what we're seeing is the failure in that late game execution. It just shows you that these guys don't know each other. But it also shows you freaking Keith Williams, you got to get on the court, bro. You got to get on the court. Because that, as much as okay, this team they're going to be heavily dependent on Keith's play. He's going to go. They're going to go as far as he can take them, and he knows that, and Brandon knows that, and Brandon wants him to go out there and drop 25 a game. But the crazy thing is He's shown that he dropped 27 on Furman. Was it Furman? He dropped 27 that game. But the thing about him that's special is defensively he's so good. Like, he can lock down whoever, but you can't do that when you're on the bench. And he's having a difficult time figuring out how to play effective defense without fouling. Now, I think that Tennessee game was a bit of an aberration. Like, they were calling crazy stuff, but I also think Keith had some silly fouls in that game. And as a player, you got to figure out, okay, this is how they're going to call it. Okay, I have to adjust. If they're going to call it this tightly, I need to adjust. I need to figure out what can I do to help my team and stay on the court. And I don't think he did a good enough job doing that, obviously, that night, that day. But Keith has to be on the court. And when he's on the court, they're just an entirely different team. And we've seen it through these 4 games. When he's out of foul trouble, able to be aggressive on both ends of the court, they're a really freaking good team. And when he's not out there, they're just not that good.
So I want to take that. So, prior to the season starting, I did a kind of a preview of this team, and I said 2 things in the preview. Keith Williams has to be a leader of this basketball team, and David DeJulius has to be the head of this whole thing. Like, he has to be the CEO of this operation on the court. But here's one thing that I want to say about Keith. I think I've kind of resigned to the fact that Keith is never going to be your Trey Scott type of leader. Like, he's not going to be that grab everybody together in the huddle, talking and all that. He's got to lead by his play.
100%.
Right? He's got to lead and be that guy that does so many things. Because listen, almost, I would say, looking at their schedule, almost 90% of the time stepping on a court, he is, if not the most athletic guy on the court, top 2 athletic guys on the court, period, right? So he has to enforce that. And then secondly, which I want you to talk about this, in my opinion, I think David DeJulius, because of his, past experience, kind of his, his savvy, his veteranship, needs to be the vocal leader and the CEO on the court. Do you agree with those 2 things?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer that is I'm not sure yet, because I think they're still trying to figure out who, like, I think Davenport, in a weird way, he might be that guy. And I don't know if that's who he should be right now, but he's almost the guy that they're looking to for that energy and for that vocal leadership. But I do agree with you that what I thought was going to happen, I'll be honest, what I thought as this season would go along is I thought we might see David DeJulius more at the 2. And then I thought from everything that we were hearing from Brandon that Mike Saunders was going to be freaking amazing. And not to say that he won't be, but I thought that this kid would come in ready to roll, just a freaking assassin, a speed bullet on both ends, dishing it out. So I thought as this season would go, Brandon being so high on Mikey, I thought he'd be like, look, man, take the ball, go, hey, we're going to move David off the ball, make him play 2, which is something they did a lot at Michigan, and we're going to go that route. But I think what we're seeing is David has embraced this point guard role. He's like, no, this is mine. I got this. And that's good. I mean, he's leading the team in assists. He seems to really be a great leader as far as keeping the offense going at the right pace, making the right plays, helping guys be in the right spots. So I do agree with you that, he needs to be that CEO and that leader of the team. But, I mean, look, man, I'm not sure who has to be the vocal guy. Like, I'm not sure if he has to be that guy. I think if it is Davenport, like the way that Davenport is, what I love about his game is he's like I talked about Melvin earlier, being that instant guy off the bench. Davenport has pulled this team out of fires every time he comes into the game, especially in Tennessee, because Keith had 3 fouls in 23 seconds. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I'm saying. And then Davenport comes in and 3-point, defense, steal, rebound, boom. So I think, you know, I had asked Brandon before the season started, you know, Trey and Jaren were so big parts of this team a season ago. Who takes on those roles? Is this more of like, Keith, you're now Jaren, or you're like, and hey, you know, this guy's going to be the next Trey? Or he's like, we don't know. He's like, my job to figure out who is which role. And I think as these guys figure out each other and they get comfortable in this team and the thing too, man, is like, when you're at these games, it's so weird because there's no fans and it's quiet and there's no energy. So, like, during moments where these teams are usually going to grab a hold of the energy in the arena and they need that extra boost, it's not there. So that may be the biggest thing that they need, not just Cincinnati, but college basketball teams in general, is that maybe the most important player on these teams is who can provide that instant energy, because it's just not there this year because of these empty arenas. And I think Davenport has been that so far. But salute to DeJulius, man. Like, he takes really good care of the basketball. Like, he had his first turnover against Furman of the season, and Brandon was like, it shook him up a little bit. And I'm like, yo, bro, like, you can have turnovers. It's fine. Like, but you know, David is a special player, and I think, and like I said, I think he's one of the 3 guys that know what to do. I think one thing that's going to be important for this team is Chris Vogt. And look, man, you're 7'1", 260. Okay, you cannot get 1 rebound in a game. You cannot do that. And I understand that he may not be the most assertive and aggressive, bro, but I'm 6 foot, 200 pounds. I'm well past my athletic prime. You throw me on the court and give me 32 minutes of action, I'm going to figure out how to get you more than 1 rebound. And it's just, it's unacceptable for him to be that. I mean, I'm not saying he needs to give you 20 points and 10 rebounds a game. You'd love to see that. But for a guy that, you know, went out and got some feedback from the NBA and they let him know what he needed to do to get to that level, bro, I need to see more from you in your senior year. So, I don't know. I think this team could be good, but, you know, they got to figure out, you know, what they want to be and how these puzzles are going to fit. So
let's talk about the assertion of Tari Eason into the lineup. And I thought that was a great move. And I think, in my opinion, if they would have had some more games prior to, I think this move would have happened a lot earlier. And you would have seen Atari play against Xavier earlier if they could kind of see how Rap worked with Vogt, which I think is too slow. It doesn't work together for long stretches. So just give me your thoughts. I know you talked about Atari a little bit at the beginning about him being very, very special, but what are you seeing about him that's so special on the court?
He's so long. He's very athletic. And I think those 2 things are what separates him from everybody else. He's a true 6'8", 6'9" guy with a huge wingspan. He can jump out of the ceiling, and then he can step out and shoot the 3. But I think the coolest thing is he can play multiple positions on the defensive end. He's still a freshman, so he still is a bit careless with the ball at times. He still kind of puts himself in weird positions defensively at times, and he's played 4 college games, so you would understand. All right, he's still figuring things out, but just athletically, he's special. I mean, you just can't teach that. I don't remember which game it was, but I think David threw a alley-oop that was like 4 feet above the rim, and Tari went up there and got it, and it's like, man. So I think we need, you know, Rap is just. I think Rap's role on this team is going to be the fact that he's the elder statesman. He's the graduate transfer that has played a lot of college ball at different levels. He knows the game. He probably can help the younger guys, coach them up, and keep them grounded when, emotions are high or they're nervous or whatever the case may be. I think Brandon wanted him to be this juggernaut, and he just isn't. And I'm not saying he can't be, but he's like you said, he's slow. You can't have him and Chris on the court at the same time. You just can't, because you'll get killed defensively. So you put Tari inside, who can counteract with Chris, and I think they work well off each other, because frankly, Tari can hide some of Chris's deficiencies.
For sure.
But Chris it's frustrating because, and I don't want to talk too much ish about him, but when we talked to him first at media day, he had mentioned that he had a shoulder injury the second part of the season last year, and I'm like, that makes sense. Like, because as a fan of this program, like this time last year, I was in Wisconsin covering Packers, Bucks, Badgers, all that Marquette. So I didn't see them as closely as I would have liked. But as a fan of this team, I still keep my eye on them, and I'm like, something's up with Chris. Like, what is the deal? And then hearing about the shoulder injury, I'm like, oh, I get it now. So all right, let me give him a break. He was hurt. Like, he's going to come in here and start to really kill it. And I just haven't seen that. And I think for this team to reach its full potential, and I don't want to put so much on his back, but he has to be better than this. Like, Brandon has to be able to put him on the court and say, he's going to give me 10 and 8. 10 and 8 consistently every night. If he can give me 10 and 8, they're a different team. He can't have 5 and 5. He can't play 32 minutes and have a single rebound. It just can't happen. You're too big, bro. Like, I need you to give me more than that.
Yeah.
So I just hope that, if his goal is to play at the next level, this is it. This is the time to really show, what you're capable of. And as the senior leader, one of the senior leaders on this team, they need you to come up big, man. So hopefully we can watch him progress and fill this role as the season goes on.
And I think with Vogt last year, I remember going to
actually about Tari. I'm talking about Chris. My bad, but Tari's special. Tari's special.
We're going to get to that. But I got to tell you a story about Vogt. I went to practice last year, and I was sitting down. I was actually talking to Vogt at practice, and he was kind of like leaning. It was an awkward lean, and I'm like, "What is up? Like, why are you leaning?" And he's so big, and he's leaning, and he goes, "My shoulder's messed up." He's like, "Don't tell anybody." He's like, "Don't tweet." He's like, "My shoulder is jacked." So I knew when he told me that, like, I knew how bad it was. But you made a great point. I think one of the great things about basketball today is these kids, i.e. Keith, Chris, can go test the waters of the NBA, get some feedback, come back, and now apply that. So Chris had to get certain feedback. That's got to show on the court very soon. Like, you've got to apply that. So totally agree with that. Another point you made, Rap. I've listened to a couple press conferences with him, talked to Coach Brandon and some players, and he's kind of like that Rajon Rondo, where he can provide. Rajon with the Lakers last year is like leading film session. He's talking to guys about the small nuances of the game. And Rap can bring that type of veteran leadership that he might not be able to do a lot more on the court right now, the way things are panning out. But he can be that Rajon Rondo. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and his like you said, like Rondo, Rap's IQ is through the roof. Like, what he can't do maybe athletically or where he comes up short there, he is such a smart basketball player. And he can dissect plays. And when he talked about David's play at point guard and his value there, the way he was able to just break it down of what David brings to that lineup, I mean, he is obviously just a super, super, super smart guy. And I think that's probably going to be I think he is a valuable player, of course, but his brain is what's going to be the most benefit for this team.
Yeah. Real quick, back to Tari. One thing that's impressed me is being a freshman and then also being a freshman that's thrown into the starting lineup. I believe I heard that Gary Clark was like
the
the first power forward really to start as a freshman. So him being thrown in that fire, one thing that's really impressed me, and especially in the Xavier game when Tari got in, was he has this calm about him.
Yeah.
It's a calm, and I think somebody addressed that in the post, and just was, just like, I just try to be calm out there, and that's been very, very impressive to me. Where do you think he gets that calm from?
No, that's a great question, because when you talk about freshmen, and that's at any sport, like football, whatever the case may be, the one thing that they'll tell you is it's just hard to get used to the speed of the game.
Yep.
Like everything's going so fast, and I'm just trying to get things to slow down and for him, man, he just seems like just this really easygoing, laid back guy. When we ask him, man, how did he had a big block against Furman, and he's like, well, man, like I just the other team wanted to score a point on my team, and I just didn't want them to score a point on my team, so I didn't let them score a point on my team. Like he's so easygoing, and when he gets on, and I think that's a huge strength for him. He doesn't seem rattled. I mean, even when he's in foul trouble, he's not throwing fits and throwing his towel, and Brandon's talking to him. He's not he seems to be mature beyond his years. I haven't had the opportunity to talk to him one-on-one and really get to know his story. I'm looking forward to doing that. But he does seem like, a freshman who is well more mature than that. So I think he's a guy, as this season goes, we're going to see more and more of how special he truly is. We've seen glimpses, but I think as he gets more and more comfortable at this level, and I think, Brandon starts to really understand what he's got in him and starts to run some sets for him, and he and Keith can freaking get on the court at the same time more and really start to work off of each other. I really think that, when this season is all said and done, we're going to look back and, man, Tari was really freaking good.
I agree. Jumping back to another freshman, Mike Saunders Jr., and I tweeted this out. I would like to see moving forward a happy diet of Saunders and DeJulius on the court at the same time. And you talked about, Mike being a point, and DeJulius maybe moved to 2, but I like them together from this standpoint. I think the Bearcats have struggled defensively thus far. You look at the penetration, help side's not there. And a lot of that starts with doing your job. I played for a defensive coach in Coach Huggins.
Sure.
And one of the things that falls on that guard position, being able to stay in front of your guy and pushing that offensive player to, a box, whatever box that coach wants you to push him to. And I just think Mike Saunders' speed and DeJulius, those two together can really help this team out defensively, keeping that penetration down. Thoughts on that?
No, I agree, and like I said, I think in one way or form, those two guys would see more court action at the same time, and I think it's still possible. I think Mike is still trying to figure this thing out too as a freshman, but like you said, he's special defensively because of his speed. He's relentless. That obviously is it's obviously something that Brandon said, look, if you want to play, you're going to have to play defense. And it's something that, doesn't seem to be a burden for him. Like when he's on the defensive side, he gets after it. He gets low. He's tenacious. He uses every bit of every minute that he's on that court, good or bad, like even if he makes a mistake. But, I mean, and look, if you're going to make a mistake as a coach, look, make it 100 miles per hour, right? Don't be out there, whatever, 0.5%. Go all out, and we'll live with the result. And I think that's what we're seeing from Mikey is just he goes 100,000 miles per hour, but he's under control, I think, in a lot of cases. He's still seeing the court. He's a freshman, so he's figuring it out also. But like you said, I think his speed is, and he's a good-sized guard. He's going to cause some terror on a lot of guards this year. And, he's one of those guys, too. Like, as he continues to get more familiar and more comfortable with what Brandon needs of him, with the type of players are at this level. And I think, too, like, as these guys get into conference play, like, I'm really curious to see what happens Wednesday night when they open conference play against a team that they'll see again. But once they get into conference play and they're seeing similar and they can really get some film on these guys and figure out what's expected of them each and every night, I think we're going to see more and more guys fall into their roles. The expectations that we may have of some guys are going to be fulfilled. I think we're going to see more of the Madsen twins because we haven't seen them a great deal, and one's been hurt with this high ankle sprain. So I'm excited to see, once they get past the South Florida game, the Georgia game, as they get more and more into conference play, how these guys kind of fall in line and figure out where they fit. But Mikey's a guy that, he's special, and you see why Brandon was so excited and why he's been on him so hard since he was at NKU. He's just a special talent. He reminds me, and I don't want to overstate it, but, I used to cover UK, and my 3 seasons covering Kentucky were Calipari's first 3 years, and it was John Wall, and then it was Eric Bledsoe, and then it was Brandon Knight, and it was Marquise Teague, and they had these great guards that were so lightning quick. John Wall was at a different level, but I think Mikey is of that ilk where when he's got the basketball from end to end, man, he is lights out quick. Mm-hmm. So yeah, man, it's exciting to see these pieces, and I think Brandon's excited about all these pieces. He just has to figure out, all right, how do these freaking pieces fit together?
With that being said, so trying to figure out all these pieces, one of the pieces is now left, and that's Mamadou. Can you give us some insight on that?
Yeah, Brandon didn't go into too many details. He just basically said that he weighed what's going on with his family. I don't know if they did say that it was COVID related, that there were some concerns and some health concerns and safety concerns about COVID. And he just wanted to opt out of this year and utilize that rule this year where you're not, dinged on your eligibility, and he can come back next year with the same amount of time left on his clock. But Brandon did say that there was some things going on with his family, and that weighed on his decision, and he decided to just opt out. I think, look, Dewey isn't a guy that's a heavy stat guy. When you look at the box, he's not, he's not lighting up the stat sheet. What he does bring is experience, and he's also a big body, 6'8", 6'9", 230, whatever it is, and he provides depth, especially in a game like the Tennessee game, where guys are in foul trouble. Chris Vogt's on the bench. Tar Eason's on the bench. Keith Williams on the bench. You had 6 players at one point with 3 fouls. And you know what we needed? We needed Dew. We needed a guy who could get on the court and give us solid minutes and can take some fouls and play solid defense. And if he's down below for a lob or whatever the case may be, he can give us a few buckets. But he's just one of those guys that he can give you that dirty brand of basketball in the sense that, hey, I can just give you hard minutes, everything that I got for however many minutes I play, particularly during a game where the depth is challenged. But yeah, I think Brandon wouldn't speak on it because I think someone had asked him if there's a possibility that Dew would come back later in the year, if things kind of switched up a little bit, if the COVID took a turn and it was safer, if he felt safer, and he didn't want to speak on that. But it did feel like, which was great, that he has the support of the program and his teammates, and he can still utilize the facilities and the academic resources that are available to him. And so it just felt like it was a mutual thing where they were like, yo, we get it, and if you want to come back, you're welcome. We salute you and all that. So it didn't feel like there was any hard feelings at all. It just felt like there was more of like, look, man, this is a really trying time for all of us, and he's obviously got some things going on personally that are pulling him away, so he just elected to opt out, which it sucks, but hey, man, this is a weird time. You got to put family first.
Absolutely, and I think sometimes fans have to understand that, you watch a young man on the court, and there's so much going on off the court that you don't know about. So there could be a lot going on in Dew's life, like you talked about. I think a lot of fans were questioning, Dew's averaging 8 minutes a game going into the, prior to him opting out before the Tennessee game, and people are like, oh, is he going to jump in the transfer portal? Is this the last we've seen of Mamadou? And that was out there a lot, and I don't know. I'm
not sure, honestly. I haven't gotten any inkling of that. Again, it didn't seem that way, but
yeah,
it wouldn't shock me either. And maybe maybe that is something that's on his mind, and maybe he's saying maybe I don't fit in as like I thought I would this year. But I don't want to put words in his mouth because he hasn't said that. They haven't said that. But yeah, we'll see how this thing shakes out in the next couple weeks. But I'd be shocked if we see any ado with Cincinnati for the rest of the year.
And a side note, real quick. Speaking of the whole COVID situation and opting out, I don't know if you had a chance to see the video of Keontae Johnson, Florida's star player, going down.
Yeah, I finally watched it yesterday.
Oh man, that's tough. And I know Key. I know him, and I know the Florida staff very well. That's scary stuff, man. Very scary stuff. And there's just a lot of, there's a lot of stuff out there. Like, did he have COVID? I mean, he had COVID, but was that a result of him? That's scary.
It's scary. It's scary. I purposely hadn't watched it. And
tough to watch.
My mom texted me yesterday and was like, I just saw the video and I can't believe it. So I pulled it up and then he was bleeding because he hit the court with so much force. My concern is that it's COVID related. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I know that he had it, and I know he had healed or recovered from it. But there have been athletes, particularly in the Big Ten, that have had, and I can't remember the name, but it's that heart condition that's COVID related, and that was one of the reasons why the Big Ten, killed the season initially. Is that they had some athletes who had this heart condition. They're like, "Yo, this is serious. Let's take a step back. We're not going to play." And then, of course, parents went crazy, and some of the athletes, and then they finally made it on the field. But I'm really anxious and respect to him and his family, and I hope he gets better. And that's the priority, of course. But I am curious to know what's happening because if it is COVID related, shut all this shit down. I just and I think and I'm not, and I don't want to put any oil on the fire or any any of that. The longer it takes for them to release what's ailing him, it leads me to wonder, because if that is the case, and he's such a big player in college basketball, he's an NBA guy, he's one of the top prospects in next year's draft. If this does have anything to do with COVID, it changes the perception of everything. Like, this is serious, and we need to really, is this what we should be doing right now? Right. But the priority, I don't want to, I'm not trying to, do any rumors, or I'm not reporting anything. I just hope that, I know he's in critical but stable, and I want that to improve, and he's such a special young man and young player, and I hope that he's able to, I hope he's able to be healthy again, and I know he loves the sport of basketball, and I hope he's able to play again. But that was really, really tough to watch, really tough.
I have never seen a player collapse face first as hard as he did. I mean, it was you even look at, Scotty Lewis, some of the other guys, they're like, holy, this is bad. Yeah. And I just, having, met Key a bunch and talked to him, I'm like, please don't die from this. I did get reports yesterday from somebody within the Florida program that he is progressing. So that's a good thing. So I don't think we're going to see him on the basketball court for a while, but let's just hope he improves. Speaking of improving, I think you might know where I'm going with this. Free throw shooting. And so I had a Bearcat fan ask me, will they improve on their free throw shooting? And I said, I think so, and here's why. I think they're capable free throw shooting makers, okay? Mm-hmm. Keith Williams shot the basketball, well from the free throw line last year. He's struggling right now. Yeah. Right. It's mental right now. He Keith can say, I don't know what's going on. It's mental. There's a focus. And I personally think, if you watch some of these games, the Lipscomb to Xavier to Firm, if you watch these games, a lot of these guys are on the court right now thinking a lot. right? So you take all of that thinking and you bring that to the free throw line. They're thinking about not just the free throw. They're thinking about, okay, after this free throw, where am I supposed to go? So your concentration on that particular free throw is out the window. So, so I'm leading to say this and ask you this. Bearcat fans are like, well, are they practicing free throws? Of course they are. It's a mental thing. What's your take on it right now?
No, I agree with you, and I think as we've discussed about them learning each other and learning their roles and getting more comfortable with each other out on the court and figuring out what they each need to do to make this team successful, they're all wondering about all of that stuff, and then the best time to think about it is at the line when you got plenty of time by yourself. And I agree. I think we're going to see, just like every other aspect of this team, I think that's going to be an improvement. It's weird to see Keith struggle at the line because we're not accustomed to seeing that. I've asked Brandon, I asked Keith. They're both like, he's fine, I'm fine. It's just something that's going on. I'll get through it. It is definitely a weird thing. And I know Brandon said something weird the other day about they haven't been practicing offense. And I think that they, I don't know how Brandon is structuring his practices. We haven't been able to see them yet because of COVID. Usually every coach has a block where before we even get into stuff, we're at the line practicing free throws. I'm sure Brandon's doing that. But when he said he's not, and I thought like over the years, at least in my lifetime, right? Like, and you played for Bob, and then you got Andy for a second, and then Cronin, and now Brandon. There's so much defensively minded coaches. That's the priority. We'll figure it out on the offensive end, but we're going to win games with our tenacious defense, and we're going to suffocate teams night in and night out. And but I thought, like, when he said that, damn it, they're not making a lot of shots either. Like, if you look at their three-point percentage in a lot of these games, they're struggling there. So I was just like, when he said that, I'm like, I feel you, John. I absolutely feel you, and I don't disagree with you at all. Like, defense is a priority, and that's been the calling card of this defense for the last 30, or this program for the last 35, 40 years. We need to shoot more. I think that, look, Brandon sees the deficiencies in this team. He sees this is where we're coming up short. This is where we need more work. He sees that, and I asked him. I asked him before you play South Florida Wednesday night in open AAC play, what is your priority? And he said, our priority right now, because it's our number one issue, is late game execution. We are really bad at executing late in games, and if we were better, we'd be 4-0. And so I think he's like prioritized. That's number one. Then we'll get to the free throw shooting. Then we'll, down the line and da-da-da-da. But I think fans got to remember, this isn't your normal year. This isn't where we had the same off season. These guys don't even know day by day if they'll be even able to practice. They have to get tested, and then they have to be okay to be able to take the court. If there's a positive roommates, girlfriends, friends got COVID, and we got to take a day off to make sure that nobody has whatever. Like, so everything is weird day by day. And not only is this going to affect Cincinnati, it's going to affect every single. Look what's happening with the football team. They haven't played for a month because of COVID. So this is a really weird year. And everybody's dealing with it, and it wouldn't, things like that are going to pop up this year where, man, Keith is usually an 80% shooter. He's only 65 right now. What's happening? Well, look what these kids are dealing with. You know what I mean? Like, these people forget, man, too. Like, and I saw Coach K the other day, and he's like, I think it was coincidental that he came off of back-to-back losses at home, and I think. Look, Coach K's never been one to, shy away from a competition or from a big game. I think you got to remember, these kids are 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. They're away from their families. Now they're on these campuses where all the kids are gone. Like, everyone's gone. The students are gone home with their families. And this is just, those of us who are much older are having trouble dealing with these trying times. Just imagine if you were a teenager away from your family and you don't know, everything's uncertain, and you don't know if you'll be able to play Wednesday, or, you know, you got a guy just opted out. You imagine the conversations that were had after Dew decided to opt out. You want to think that some other guys maybe weren't thinking about it or worried about it, or so it's just, I think fans need to just, you know, understand, and these are kids, man. These are yes, these are young men, but these are still a lot of times teenagers who are dealing with the craziest time that they'll probably ever experience in their life. This hasn't happened in 100 years. So, yeah, man, just give them a minute. Let them sort through their feelings and their emotions and figure this stuff out.
Living day to day is tough for adults. Imagine living day to day as a young man, 100%. As a teenager. It's very, very tough. So, from your perspective, and you've given some great insight thus far, from your perspective, what would you like to see out of this Bearcat team at the USF game, and then also going on the road to Georgia?
I'd like to see better late game execution. I think that was the priority for John. You know, I asked him, he said that's what we're going to work on these next few days after the Tennessee loss. So I'd like to see some improvement. I'd like to see guys have more confidence in out-of-bounds sets, and just have a better rhythm out there after having, you know, a few games under their belt and playing against a really good team and holding their own against a really good team. I think if I'm Brandon, look, he even said after the game, look, we don't take moral victories. And look, I agree with you. I agree with them. I don't believe in that either. But I think that day, I think they needed. Look, you want to win that game, but to go down there and to go toe to toe with a team that's as talented as any team they'll face this season, I think that was something that they can really truly build on. And you know, if Keith is on the court 3 more minutes that game, we may be talking about a different outcome. So I want to see better late game execution. I want to see Keith stay out of foul trouble, and with Chris Vogt back at home in his own gym, bro, like let's get it. Let's get a little more from you, and let's figure out how we can play effective, strong team defense without getting into foul trouble, which is obviously something that has gotten them in some trouble. And then in Georgia, it's another SEC team, and Brandon
on the road.
He stopped short of taking jabs at that ref, at that crew in Tennessee. But he even said, look, he was like, yo, I'm a former SEC coach. I've been in this league a lot of years. I know these refs. They're all great guys. I'm fans of all of them. But they had a rough night. You know, we all have rough nights. And he pretty much stopped there. He didn't want to say anymore. He's gonna have another SEC crew on his hands, you know, in next weekend. So, and then that's going to be a game too where, you know, they're going to have to really muster a lot of energy, probably knowing that the UC football game is at the same time. So there may not be a lot of eyes on you guys. So we got to play for each other tonight because people may not be watching us because there may be a slim college football playoff selection on the line. So it's just, you know, there's a lot of emotion with every game, obviously, but this year included, and even more so. So I just want to see some improvement emotionally, and just them showing that they're improving and growing as they're continuing to get more and more familiar with each other.
Yeah. So let's talk quickly, and we'll kind of wrap things up here. Coach Brandon, you've mentioned him quite a bit, and you've talked to him. In your opinion, coming now into the circle here of media and dealing with John Brandon, what's your impression of Coach Brandon, and what are your thoughts on this basketball program moving forward under his leadership?
I think Brandon's a really great guy. When I first got here, and I called him before I actually got to Cincinnati. And we talked for, 30 minutes on the phone, just off the record about our histories and just getting to know each other. And then once I got into town, he took me out to lunch, and we just chatted off the record and just got to, again, just getting to know one another. And the really cool part, not just about Brandon, not just about Fickle, But I said this to Michelle Clark-Hurd, too, the women's coach, about I feel that we have our three most prominent coaches, the three head coaches of our three most prominent programs, really love being here. It's not, I feel like it's not viewed as a stepping stone. Now, we'll never know what the future holds, but you got a coach in Luke Fickell who's an Ohio guy, and he freaking loves Cincinnati. His wife's happy. His kids love it here. He gets paid well, and he's got it rolling over there. And then when you look at Brandon, he's a Northern Kentucky kid who spent a lot of his childhood in St. Bernard. He was a huge Bearcat basketball fan growing up. Of course, Bobby Brandon's a distant relative, but he really truly loves being at Cincinnati. And this is a top 10 program. Like this isn't like you're at wherever. This is a program that historically is one of the best and the most elite in the country, and he views it that way. So we have I think Brandon is a really good coach for this team because he knows the history, he knows where it's been, and I think it's important for him, not just for the sake of his job. But I think him being a fan and knowing the history of this program, it's important for him to restore it and to get it back to where we all want it to be. And so having talked with him, and just gotten to know him the little time that we've had, gotten to just chat one-on-one, he seems like a really authentic guy. And it has been a pleasure getting to know him, and I think it was a good hire because I just think it's rare when you find just the right guy to be here at the right time. I think Fickell's that. I think Brandon's that. And I think Michelle Clark-Hurd, who has a history at UC as well, I just did a story with her. She is so happy at Cincinnati, which is her second home. She's from Louisville. But we got three coaches who are really, truly happy at Cincinnati and who are looking to build something sustainable and long-lasting and not just here for a year or two or three and then going to that next step. And I think that's important when you're recruiting and you're trying to build something. You have a coach who's like, I'm going to see you graduate, and then when you come back with your kids, I'll probably still be here. And that's valuable. So I just think we have that in John, and I could say that he leaves in 2 years. But my point is that he's really happy here, and his face lights up when he talks about the future and the players that he has. So I think we got something special in John. And the great thing about him too is his players really truly love him, and they talk about how they trust him and the positions that he puts them in. They trust his play calls, and I think what's great about John too is when he makes a mistake, he owns it. They're like, that was me. That wasn't them. I put them in a poor position last night, or I did this, or I should have done that. That's on me. And it's great especially when you're 17, 18, 19, 20, and you're figuring things out, and you got a coach that can say, that was my fault. So big fan of John.
That doesn't happen a lot, Keith. That does not happen a lot at that level with coaches.
And we have egos, we all do, and especially when these guys are making crazy amounts of money to be the CEOs of these programs. A lot of guys are quick to blame, this 18-year-old who, made a turnover on the last, whatever. But no, I just when I speak with John, when I speak with Luke, when I speak with Michelle, you can feel when it's an act or when it's not authentic, and they don't really, they're just saying what they want you to hear, and I just don't get that sense with them. So I just think we got a really super trifecta of coach. I met Scott Dugans too over at the baseball team, and he's dope. So I just think we got a nice batch of coaches, and I think John is definitely one of them. I think the basketball program's in good hands.
I'm glad that Bearcat fans got to hear you say that, because I've preached it. I've been at the top of the mountain singing that song for a while, and I'm glad to have another person like yourself saying that. So Bearcat fans will love that. Now, the last part here, I usually do this when I interview a former player, but I want to do this with you here at the end of this podcast. So what I do is I like to ask some quick questions, and I want quick answers from you. Okay, you ready?
Okay, let's do it.
All right, here we go. Quick questions, quick answers with Keith Jenkins. Here we go. Greatest rapper of all time and why?
Jay. I think Jay has been able to do what no other rapper has been able to do, and that's stay relevant and sound amazing for 20, 30 years. I just think he has been able to deliver every single time out at every level, whether it's underground, mainstream, pop, current, and then he's able to shift the culture like anyone else. He says wear button-ups, we're wearing button-ups. He says wear throwbacks, we're wearing throwbacks. All white Air Force Ones, that's now the dress code. So but I just think lyrically and then his influence on pop culture, I think it's unmatched.
We agree 100%.
That's a long answer.
No, it was
you
great.
You said quick answer.
I'm with you 100%. Have you ever been to a Hove concert?
I have. I've seen several of Hove. The best concert I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot, but it was the Rock the Mic tour. 2004, and they came 50, here right? Over at. Yep, that was a 50. But they also had that was a juggernaut. Snoop was there, and then Missy was on some Bone Crusher. They had Fabulous was out there. Like they had a lot of heavy hitters, and this was when 50 was. 50 was a monster, right?
Bulletproof vest, no shirt.
Yeah, like he was the guy with his G-Unit crew. And then when 50 was done with his set, then Jay dropped, and you were like, oh shoot, Jake still got to go, and Jay killed it. Jay killed it. Yeah.
Yes, he did. I'm with you. I was there. I was at Riverbend. Do you remember that big storm that came through? Right.
Oh my gosh, bro.
Yeah.
I had some clean. I think I had some fresh white Air Forces that night, and just they weren't fresh and white after that show. It was worth it, though. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. No question. Okay, question number 2. In your opinion, greatest Cincinnati sports figure of all time?
Oh, wow, great question. Greatest. I'd have to go Barry. That's a tough one, but I'll say Barry because he was my favorite, but more so than that, he won a championship. And I think if we're talking about greatest, like I don't know if you can truly be great if you don't deliver a ring or a trophy, or we don't have a great deal of those in this city. And we've had great athletes, but Barry was an MVP, and he got us a ring, and that's, let me do my math. That was the last one. 1990, I think, is the last time that this city has seen a major championship. So, and Barry was the guy on that. He was, and they swept them bad boys. So, so he was that dude on that team, and he was amazing for this city for years and years and years. So I'll go Barry.
Good, man. That's good. I just interviewed Byron Larkin, his brother. He told some great stories about Barry. So. That's spot on. So, all right, a third question here, and it's a two-parter. All right, in your opinion, greatest, and Oscar doesn't count, greatest UC basketball player of all time, take an Oscar out of it, and then the second part, greatest UC football player of all time.
Greatest UC basketball player of all time, and we can't say Oscar. Okay. I'll probably go Kenyon, and then there may be a bit of a recent bias there, but in my lifetime, he was a transcendent talent. And to see his improvement year after year, because when he got here, he was just a freak athlete, and he really was a all-around great basketball player by the time he left. And I mean, I did the best cross-town shootout performances of all time the other day, and I threw Kenyon's performance as my honorable mention because there were just so many great ones that were better than his. But that performance, I think it was 1999, where he only had like 8 points and 8 rebounds, I think, but he had 6 blocks. And those 6 blocks were freaking demoralizing. And there was that one block that he threw to the other side of the damn arena. So that's tough. That's a tough question because you got Danny, you got Nick, but Steve Logan, freaking Steve was amazing. But I'd have to say Kenyon. What was the other favorite football player?
Well, real quick, I got a quick Kenyon story for you on the blocks. So we used to have a coach named Rod Baker, who was the assistant coach when I was there. And one game, Kenyon blocked. We were playing like UNC Asheville. And Kenyon blocked this dude's shot into like the 12th row. And after the game, and Kenyon was my locker roommate, and so he's right next to me. So after the game, Rod Baker comes over and says, Ken, I want you to do me a favor. And he goes, I want you to watch some video on Bill Russell. Bill Russell would block shots, but he would keep them in bounds so we can get the ball and go on the break. And he was like, I would like for you to start blocking shots and keeping them in bounds. So Kenyon just gives him this look, doesn't say a word. And then Kenyon kind of looks at me and, just has this look. Next game we play, Kenyon goes on to block like 3 shots, and Kenyon tried to block them so far in the stands. But Kenyon's point was to Coach Baker, and Coach Baker after the game was like, what the – Kenyon's like, I get what you're saying, Coach, and I'll probably do that in certain games, but I'm trying to kill the psyche of this team. If I block that shot and throw it so far, it just kills their mentality. And Kenyon was right. He would do that over and over, and it would just kill the other team's psyche. Every time. And I'll tell you a Kenyon story. He was so I was at Bob Huggins basketball camp in 1998, either 98, 99, and our team won the 5-on-5 championship, and Kenyon was our coach. And this was, I think, Dick Shimbo was one of the assistants. Yeah. And so, Kenyon hated him. And I'm sorry, Kenyon, if I'm he couldn't stand him. So, I remember Dick was he was in the middle of the camp. He had the middle of the court. He had he was telling the campers, all right, we got about 10 more minutes and then we're going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And the entire time he's talking, Kenyon is leaning up against the basket with a whistle in his mouth. I'm sitting right next to him, and he's just blowing his whistle the whole time that Dick is talking. He just and then Kenyon used to call him Shim Dick. He used to call him that all the time. I'm so sorry, Kenyon. Kenyon's probably mad as hell. Man, you're not supposed to. But that was hilarious. I'll never forget that. That. Good old Shimbo. Yep, he was our. You're right on that. Kenyon would give Shimbo so much shit. Deservedly so, though. Shimbo would do some wild stuff. Okay, greatest UC football player of all time.
Greatest football player of all time.
You can't say your dad. Your dad's.
I was going to ask you something like that. The greatest football player of all time. Gosh, that's so tough.
And you don't hear that question asked a lot. You always hear basketball, but you don't hear that.
Yeah. Man, it's tough because I tend to lean toward the guys who have had major pro careers after us, but I don't think that's fair. I think if we just limit to just their UC careers, what Michael Warren did was special. Isaiah Pete was special. I'm gonna get killed for this, but I'm gonna say a different one, and I'm gonna say Gino Gaduli. And let me tell you why. Because I think he had his struggles, don't get me wrong. Look at his stats. Look at that man's stats and what he did while he was at UC. But also, remember his career and where that program was before him and after him. And that this wouldn't be a popular choice, and there are several other names I could say that would be better choices. I get that. But his impact on this program and his impact on this program still, because he is the quarterback's coach now.
Yes, he
and
is.
Look how great Desmond Ridder is playing right now. And look at who we just landed in Evan Prater, the 2019 Mr. Football, Ohio Mr. Football. Was a great impact player when he was here as a player, and he is having that same impact as a coach and as a recruiter. And because of all of that in totality, I'm going to give Gino the nod, and maybe that'll give me some points and I'll get an exclusive.
You're trying to get the exclusive. I like that. I like that positioning. That's good stuff. I tend to lean towards Tony Pike in a lot of ways. I I mean, that Pittsburgh game is still the greatest game in UC football history. You know, and just the last play, what Tony did on the field. I'm big on Tony Pike.
That team was special. Salute to Tony, Marty Gilliard. That team was special.
No question. Lastly, real quick, your prediction on the football game this Saturday, 8 p.m. right? 8 p.m.
8 p.m. ABC. I'll be there. I think they'll win. I think this is a legit football team. It's not Power 5, Group of 5. All that aside, Luke Fickell and Marcus Freeman are building a juggernaut through the recruiting trail, and they're getting them on campus. They're not just, and now they're getting 4-star players coming in, but they got a lot of really good 3-star players who they have turned into 4- and 5-star NFL caliber players. They've developed really well. They play phenomenal defense, and Desmond Ritter's confidence is sky high. And we haven't seen this team play in a month, but they have yet to win a championship under Fickell, and that is his goal, to just win a championship. That was his goal from day one, and it is now staring them right in the face. I really hope they're able to take the field, because I'm just afraid of COVID and something happening these next few days. But I think Tulsa's a really good team, and they got this kid, Zevin Collins, that is legit. But I think at the end of the day, UC is one of the best. They have one of the best defenses in all of college football, and offensively they can kill you in several different ways. And I think they know if there's any shot at all, and it's slim, but if there's any shot at them getting into this college football playoff, they need to go out and they need to dominate Tulsa, and I think they'll do that at home. So, score, I don't know, 40-17, 21, somewhere in that range.
I mean, you feel like they've got to blow them out.
They got to look. I mean, they need to leave no doubt in the committee's mind. And again, the committee hasn't been able to see them in such a long time. They dropped them in their last rankings from 7th to 8th, which was ridiculous, because now a 2-loss Iowa State team is ahead of them, and they're just showing you that if you're not in one of those Power 5 conferences, you're not getting any of this money. This is our money. But UC has an opportunity, a legit opportunity, to be the first Group of 5 to crash the party. And if they go out here against Tulsa and say, yo, there is nobody who can mess with us, and y'all think this team is good, because Tulsa's a good team, and the committee thinks they are. But they need to show that this team is in our league. Like, literally, they can't even be on the same field as us. And if they do that, and some other things kind of fall apart here in the next week, you never know. They could sneak in there and become one of those 4 teams. It's a long shot, but it's a shot. We'll see.
Keith, this is great content. You were gracious with your time. I didn't expect us to go this long, but man, this is all, like, we were on a roll. This is all great content. It is great to have you in town. It is great to have you reporting on the Bearcats. I've kind of followed some of the reporting you're doing. I've watched some of the post-game Bearcat stuff that they post on YouTube, and heard you interacting with the coaches and players and stuff. And I think you do a great job. And even on a different note, it's also great to see more black journalists in our town, especially reporting on the Bearcats. So thank you for that, and using your platform for that as well.
My man, I appreciate that. It means a lot. I really do.
Yes, sir. We're going to catch up soon, man. Let's do this again, okay?
I got you, Meach. Thank you, sir.
All right, Keith. Be safe, man.
You too.
Later.
I want to thank everyone for listening to Season 2 of the Bearcat Basketball Podcast. Once again, you can follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Alex_Meacham. Meacham spelled Meacham. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn, Alex Meacham. I'm on Snapchat, Big Meach 41. And I'm now dancing on TikTok at Alex Meacham 41. I appreciate everyone listening to the Bearcat Basketball Podcast. Go Bearcats!